There's been plenty shared over the last week and a bit about which recommendations from the 100-day Games Review are planned to be implemented for Brisbane's 2032 Olympic and Paralympic Games. But what about the recommendations that were rejected? Well, you don't hear much about those. In this video, we'll take a look at the recommendations from the review that the Queensland State Government said no to, and some that they said yes to but with conditions or only in part. Those that asked the Brisbane Channel to dig a little more into plans for Perry Park, one of the suggestions covered in this video may be good or bad news, depending on how you look at it. I try to keep the channel non-political and neutral, so I'll try not to draw conclusions or interpret the information. I'll just present what the response is and allow you to draw your own conclusions. I will try. The independent review by the Games Independent Infrastructure and Coordination Authority, or GICA. I'll refer to them affectionately as the GEEC. Anyway, the GEEC's review into infrastructure for the Games was always a non-binding set of recommendations that the Queensland Government would take into consideration when formulating their final plan for venues and other infrastructure to be built, altered, or used as is for the 2032 events. And it wasn't just venues. The 86 recommendations also cover things like transport and games governance. And really, what is more important than the review findings is which of the recommendations are actually going ahead and which aren't. And you're far less likely to hear about the ones that weren't adopted. But that's why we're here now, so let's get to it. Looking firstly at venues and villages, the main stadium recommendations were all accepted, but the GEEC's recommendations for the arena give us our first set of partial acceptances. The Brisbane Live Arena, a multi-purpose sporting and event venue, was originally planned to be built above Roma Street Station, then in a part of Roma Street Parkland, and in the review, the GEEC recommended the arena be built on the former GoPrint site in Woolloongabba, more or less directly above the future Woolloongabba Cross River Rail Station, at a cost of $2.385 billion for the arena itself. The GEEC also recommended that everything starts ASAP to allow procurement processes to begin this year. This is the first partial acceptance by the Queensland Government. They accepted the location, but as they decided, 1, not to fund the arena, turning instead to private investment, and 2, that it was not needed for the Games, the cost, delivery model and timing of development would be up in the air until they'd locked in a deal with parties from the private sector. Moving to minor venues, and we see the first fully rejected recommendation. The GEEC recommended the Moreton Bay, Sunshine Coast and Logan indoor sports centres proceed, but the Queensland Government said no to the Sunshine Coast Centre at Kawana. A bit of background here. The Sunshine Coast Council and Queensland Government had two options for the Sunshine Coast, an indoor sports centre in Kawana and another in the Maroochydore City Centre. Initially, Kawana was the preferred option due to site constraints and operational challenges associated with the Maroochydore site. But in the final week of the review, the proposal was updated, so the GEEC was unable to validate the changed proposal, and there just wasn't enough time. After receiving the recommendations on the 8th of March, the Queensland Government was able to conduct an assessment which led to them choosing Maroochydore, where they would build an integrated facility including an athletes' village. The recommendation of expansion to the Chandler Sports Precinct and the use of the facility to its maximum capacity was partially accepted, pending further detail from the GEEC. We know that the Queensland Government plans to develop the Aquatic Centre in Spring Hill, but that's not what the GEEC recommended. In the Games Review, they proposed a new aquatic centre within the Chandler Sports Precinct on the site of a disused velodrome. That was the second recommendation that was flatly rejected. The Queensland Government also rejected the call to demolish the current Brisbane Aquatic Centre within the Chandler Sports Precinct, which is at end of life, saying they would consider the future of the venue in consultation with the venue owner, Stadiums Queensland. When it came to rowing, the GEEC recommended holding the event in Sydney. The Queensland Government said no. As we know, the rowing and canoeing events will be held in Rockhampton's Fitzroy River, a habitat for saltwater crocodiles. The selection of that location is highly controversial, and not just because of the crocs, but that's something I'll save for a later video. It was originally expected that the rowing events would be held west of Brisbane at Wyaralong, but the area was deemed too remote and undeveloped, so the cost of preparing it for Olympics would be too great. So the suggestion to develop both the Wyaralong and Rockhampton rowing facilities as a legacy outcome also was rejected, with the Queensland Government response pointing out that upgrades to the Rockhampton facilities will be under the Minor Venues program. Don't forget you can say thanks for these videos by buying me a coffee, or becoming a member of the channel. Thanks to these members for their continued support. Now let's talk about Perry Park. The vast majority of the 230 football-related submissions to the review supported an upgrade to Perry Park, a football pitch near Bowen Hill Station. And many viewers of the Brisbane Channel have requested I dig into what's actually planned. Well, the Queensland Government response to the Geeks recommendation that additional funding be allocated to enable upgrades to both Perry Park and QSAC as training venues doesn't give much more detail about their intentions, but it does give us an idea of the earliest they're likely to even be thinking about sharing a plan. In their response to the recommendation, the Queensland Government said that they accepted the Geeks recommendation in principle, but that investment decisions for all training venues will be determined following finalisation of the sport program by the IOC in 2026. So I'm sorry to say it's very unlikely we're going to get anything from the Queensland Government about plans for Perry Park until sometime next year. I can bring you videos like this thanks to support from local Brisbane businesses. And did you know that the winner of the Best International Travel Insurance for Value in Finder's 2024 Travel Insurance Awards is a local Brisbane company? Wise and Silent Travel Insurance won the 2024 Value Award because it costs less on average, but covers you for more. They're also the official travel insurance provider for Australian passengers on Scoot Airlines and the sponsor of this video. Backed by a global insurance provider and a 24/7 medical assistance team, the rave reviews on Trustpilot confirm that you can travel with total peace of mind if you choose Wise and Silent for your next overseas trip. Click this QR code or the link in the video description to get an exclusive 10% discount on your premium. A big part of planning for the Olympics is transport infrastructure, and I need your help with this part. You see, while the Queensland Government accepted every recommendation about improving transport infrastructure, every single acceptance came with the same caveat in the form of a note. For recommendations on improving public transport, road upgrades, the South East Queensland Transport Coordination Centre, active transport accessibility and more, the Queensland Government response was, except noting funding opportunities will be required to progress this recommendation. So I'm going to share with you the way it appears to me, and you can correct me or confirm or provide more details that can help clarify if it's your area of expertise. But from the wording of this, it seems that while the $7.1 billion budget that the Queensland Government are adamant they will stick to is enough in the budget for stadia and sporting facilities, but they'll need extra money for the transport upgrades to handle the traffic between them during the event, and to support South East Queensland as it grows beyond 2032. I don't know, how do you interpret the Queensland Government's response here? As far as games governance goes, the one rejected recommendation was the Geeks' call for a games coordination unit to be established within the Geek. The Queensland Government said that coordination of the games would be led by them, headed up by the Department of Sport, Racing, Olympic and Paralympic Games. Clearly hosting Olympic and Paralympic Games is by no means a simple task, and the final set of the Geeks recommendations, many of which were not accepted by the Queensland Government, are around games delivery challenges and solutions. The first rejected recommendation was that the Queensland Government sequence the pipeline of all their projects in such a way that important public projects, things like housing, are not compromised by resources being disproportionately allocated to games infrastructure. Now, people may be quick to jump on this one and say that the Queensland Government's rejection of this recommendation shows that these things are not a priority as far as they're concerned. But the response here points out that this matter is in fact out of the scope of the review. with the geek only tasked with making recommendations on infrastructure directly involved with the delivery of the Olympic and Paralympic Games. So we can't read too much into this particular rejected recommendation. It's the same with the Queensland Government rejection of the geek's recommendation that the pool of construction workers needed to fill the demand resulting from the Games be added to by introducing a targeted program of skilled migration to the state. Again, migration policies are outside the scope of the review. While I do have plans to dig into the planned transport infrastructure and tourism goals released as part of the Queensland Government's Olympics delivery plan, I don't want this to become the Brisbane Olympics channel. There's already one of those. This is the Brisbane Channel. So the next video, the next midweek video after the weekly update, will be on something Brisbane related, but I'll give you a break from the Olympics. I'll see you there.